He did, and even greater things. And then she explores in that book the 9 spiritual principles that will support us in doing just that. And so today, I just wanted to share with you how divine order is. So I was leaving the building here yesterday on my way home, knowing I had to put the final tweaks on my message for today, and I thought, oh, I have to pick out opening songs, because that's one of my new duties, is I pick out the opening song, hopefully something you can all sing. And so I said, oh, I wonder what opening song, and then it just was like a download, and I got Weave. And I thought, how perfect, because these last 3 spiritual principles are community, death, and service. And I thought how all of these 3 practices really weave us together. We weave ourselves together when we participate in community. We weave ourselves together when any of us are experiencing a death or any other kind of ending, and people come together and support us. We weave ourselves together when we serve on any of our sacred service teams here at Unity Santa Fe, or when we serve more globally in our local and world community. So thank you, Divine Spirit, for that great inspiration for us to sing Weave today. So the purpose of today's message is to understand the role of community, death or endings, and service in doing what Jesus did and greater things. So when we look at the human condition in these 3 areas, sometimes we, or some people, isolate, I don't want to admit it, but I do it too, isolate or we limit our involvement in community to just our close friends and family. The human condition in death is that we resist death, as if that will help, right? And then in service, somehow believing that if we, give, then we should get back, or we give in order to get back. And the spiritual solution to these 3 are, first of all, to expand the circle of our friends, locally and globally. In death, to realize that our true nature is everlasting and transcend the fear of death and non-being, and to also come to terms with other type of endings. And service is that realizing service is the foundation of the law of giving and receiving. So what would be in it for you if you could take your practice of community, death and endings, and service to a higher level? Well, if I die, the church is really going to benefit because they get a big part of my estate. So that's what's in it for you. So there's a lot that we're going to receive as we give of ourselves in community, in letting things go, and in service. So, and it's also, I want to mention, good for our mental and physical health. Studies have shown that people who live with someone else live longer than people who live alone. So that's why I have 2 and now 3 dogs and sometimes a roommate. Okay. So let's look at community first. I looked it up, and I love this definition I found of it. Community is a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes and interests. So when we participate in community, when we share common attitudes and interests, we support, nourish, and inspire one another to be all we can be. Our mental health thrives on human contact, and studies have shown people have literally gone insane in isolation. Socializing provides us an opportunity to learn a very important spiritual lesson lesson because it forces us to express more of our true identity, to remove our mask and let go of the roles we play. Socializing really cements human bonds. And being in a social gathering or a community is conducive to discovering our emotional and spiritual dimensions. By striving to live as Jesus lived and apply his practices, we create not only a loving local community, but hopefully a loving global community. And we do this by opening our hearts, supporting one another, celebrating our successes and grieving together our losses. And we see ourselves in one another, and we feel a kinship as we share our path as a sacred soul on the sacred wheel of earthly life, as the Lakota prayer says. So, community is why we come to Unity Santa Fe on Sunday mornings and during the week. A lot of us already know the principles. We're just being reminded of them. We're singing about them, meditating on them. But there's a sense of community that we all receive when we show up here, or in any place where a community gathers. It gives us an opportunity to live what Jesus taught in our everyday lives. It gives us a chance to learn to accept love by letting other people see us. And there was a study that was done where babies, I think this is really cool and I hope it would not be approved as a study now, but babies who were not giving love did not normally develop, and many of them died. And Unity Minister Eric Butterworth suggested that it was not because they did not receive love, but because they didn't have a chance to give love. I thought that was a really interesting idea. So when people accept our love, they affirm that our presence matters. And so the world really does need our contributions, both small and large. It's up to us to do our part to help each member of our community, whether it's this community or what other communities we're in, see his or her value. And it's important to appreciate everyone in our community, even those who challenge us. So of course I have a couple stories about that. So it seems there was a retreat of spiritual people, right? But there was one cantankerous elderly gentleman who constantly complained and criticized. He didn't pull his weight, and generally he was a pain in the neck. His presence made the community miserable for everyone else. So at one point he just had had enough and decided to leave. And everybody else was silently cheering at his departure. But the retreat director went after the old man and offered to pay him to return to the community. Because the master understood that lasting peace does not come from having our environment free of difficult people. Rather, it is imperative for us to learn how to live in harmony with those who test us. And such people challenge us to reach deep inside and to discover our authentic selves. They give us a chance to also do our shadow work and see what it is we're seeing in them that is actually in us. Then there's another story about Abraham Lincoln, who said he was out in the country one day and he came upon a farmer plowing his field with a mule. And there was this huge horsefly on the mule's rump. And Abe went to shoo it away. And the farmer stopped him and told him to leave it be. He said, the farmer replied that the mule needed the aggravation to keep going. Okay? It was an old mule. Okay, so what did Jesus do in terms of community? Well, Jesus socialized. He was a party guy. He loved community. He loved getting together. He took a very active part in the community. And his followers were not only his disciples, they were his friends. He attended social gatherings, he demonstrated social skills are essential for success, and he modeled interacting with others so that, you know, we can step into those footsteps and do the things he did by being part of the community. Then we get to the best subject, the one that everybody loves to talk about, death, okay? And again, I have this book, 99 Success Secrets of Jesus, by Don Daniel Ortiz. And he said, you know, he reminded us that Jesus in Matthew 16:25 says, you must be willing to lose your life in order to receive it, or to find it. So he said to achieve our full potential, we have to before we can fulfill our full potential, our identity as a body has to die. If we just think we're a body, we need to let go of that idea and release that idea that this body is all of who I am. We die many times, as Kathy was mentioning, as we live. We die at each developmental stage of our life, and we're reborn to the next stage. It's a success secret because endings give way to new beginnings. Just as a caterpillar has to die in order to become a butterfly, we have to die in order to be born into something more beautiful, radiant, and magnificent. Nothing in the outer world lasts forever. Yet everything we see in this room, including ourselves and each other, came from an everlasting source. So all these material things around us, including our body, really represent the eternal nature and goodness of God. But 1,000,000 years from now, probably nothing in this room will be here. Okay, none of us and none of the stuff. But the source from which they came will be here. Our spirit will be here. I like to say our spirit was before the body, during the body, and will be after the body. So unless we're willing to accept the impermanence of our physical world and our physical body, we will never understand the greater spiritual truth. Because death is a natural part of life. So we must allow things to die in order to allow a more greater expanded experience of God into our lives. You know, I heard Larry Dossey say one time that that life is a terminal condition. Okay? You know. And it's the ultimate, I think, the ultimate humble surrender. One of our core values is humble surrender. Unless, of course, we want to go kicking and screaming. And so we have to be willing to embrace death as an integral part of our spiritual journey. So death as a spiritual practice is learning to transcend the fear of death and live life fully by experiencing and accepting what is in the present moment, the now moment, as Janine loves so much. Thich Nhat Hanh said, our greatest fear is that when we die, we will become nothing. Our greatest fear is that when we die, we will become nothing. And I remember one time praying, God, what would you like to say to me about my fear of melting into a puddle? Because that's kind of what I thought I'd die I'd do if I died, or if I took on something I was afraid to do. And I heard these words very clearly and distinctly. Dear sweet Gwendolyn, I am the puddle. Melt into me and you will never thirst again. Melt into me and I will drink every drop of you. And then I was talking to Reverend Kathleen, who a lot of you know is a hospital chaplain and has done a lot of work in hospice. And a lot of work in grieving. And she said often the greatest fear of people before they die or they know they're dying is a fear of the unknown. And I thought, wow, that is so true. The unknown, like where are we going, but also how's it going to happen? Yeah? Is it going to be painful? Is it going to be long and drawn out? You know, that's what's really behind, I think, a lot of our fears. And then I think of Woody Allen saying, I'm not afraid of death, I just don't want to be there when it happens. So, unless we lean into death, we cannot fully experience life. And Jesus found the fullness of God in every moment, even in the face of death. So it says, the next part I like to talk about is, well, what did Jesus do when it comes to death? He died. Wow, nobody got a laugh out of that one. But just think about it. If he was still around over 2,000 years later, we'd be even more dubious of being able to do the things he did and even greater things, right? So he died. He accepted his death. He died for the same reasons thousands of others did during his day. He died for protesting against the powers that were in control. And he stood up to the injustices he saw, and he spoke out. And in doing so, he drew a lot of unwanted attention to himself and ultimately lost his life as a result. And so did Martin Luther King Jr., so did Mahatma Gandhi. So death could not, however, contain the spirit and power of Jesus, and it cannot contain our spirit and power. We know that life is not restricted to the body, so we have to be willing to lay it down and look for what is permanent in the presence of God. Philosopher Ken Wilber said, the realm of non-dual spirit, immortality, doesn't mean living forever. It means the experience of timelessness. It means a movement of pure, timeless presence, not going on forever in time. He said, you can have eternal life by simply and fully being in the timeless, present, now moment with Spirit. So, we need to embrace our bodily death. We need to embrace the other endings in our lives and know that there's something better coming, you know? Now, service. We perform sacred service in our community here at Unity Santa Fe, and some of us perform service beyond these walls out in our local community. I perform a lot of service for Unity Worldwide Movement and for our region. And every time, no matter what kind of service you and I perform, we serve the divine. Okay? Like Jesus, we're out there not to get something, but because we recognize that giving is the essence of who we are. So we experience the joy that Debbie was talking about, the joy that comes with it. When we serve our community, we are involved in something bigger than ourselves, and we make a positive difference in the world. So we no longer see the world in terms of what it can give us, but rather in terms of what we can give it. Our co-founder, Charles Fillmore, our Unity co-founder, Charles Fillmore said, we shall serve for the joy of serving, and prosperity will flow to us flow to and through us in streams of plenty. So I came up with a little affirmation. I serve for the joy of serving. I serve for the joy it brings. I serve for the joy it brings others, and for the joy it brings me. So happiness is actually derived from making a positive difference in somebody's life or in the world. It is tied directly to our natural talents and abilities. And as we serve, we add a little bit each day to Jesus' vision of a more compassionate world. So what did Jesus do to serve? Jesus knew that the reason for his being was to share himself and his wisdom with those around him. He gave without expecting anything in return because he knew that he would be given everything he needed in order to live life abundantly, doing exactly what he was called to do. And his powerful presence and dedication to truth were enough to assist him and many others in realizing their own health and wholeness. Jesus had a talent for healing, and he healed. He had a talent for teaching, and he taught. So how do we do this? How do we increase our practices of community, death, and service? Well, first and foremost, it's always prayer and meditation. That when we pray and meditate, we are indeed serving all of humanity. When we turn to our own spiritual growth, we help create a world that is kinder and gentler for everyone. So some of her suggestions were that during meditation, you set your intention to be of service. Ask, how may I serve? How may I be part of community? How may I lean into death so that I may more fully experience life? When I think of service and community, there's no better way in this community to participate in community and serve by being part of the Soul Circle. And also serving on our Sacred Service Ministry teams. And also the Soul Circle is a great way to serve social action, because our soul circles all go out beyond the soul circle, beyond these walls, to serve in some way in our community. So I celebrate that each one of us goes forth from this time together, participating in community, accepting death and other endings, and being of service in order to do the works that Jesus did and even greater things. And let's begin doing that right now in a sacred time of shared prayer. And so let's take a moment to become fully present to this now moment. And in this moment, we become aware of our breath. And we just allow each breath to move in us, through us, as us, without obstruction. We allow each breath to remind us of the life that is living in us. And so as the body relaxes and the mind stills, we let the heart open to these ideas of spiritual practices of community, death, and service. And just as Felicia in her book suggested that in our meditation we ask, how can I be more active in community? How can I be more accepting of death and other endings? How can I be more of service, locally and globally? And so I invite us to just take time individually, even as we are being one together, to contemplate these questions of community, death and endings, and service. And just allow that presence, that power of the divine that we are, to reveal what needs to be healed, reveal what needs to be revealed, and heal what needs to be healed in the silence. And as we gently bring our attention back to this time and place, silently say, thank you, divine I am. Thank you for the wisdom to participate more fully in community, to lean into death and other endings in order to live life more fully, and to make a difference in the world by serving for the joy of serving. Thank you, divine I am. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That it is so, and so it is. Amen.